Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Burke. I've analyzed the information that you previously gave me, and I've prepared a financial plan based on your goals and objectives. So let's briefly go over these goals. You want to increase your annual savings, decrease your current debt, plan to save enough for the down payment on a home of 20% of $180,000 in today's money for the purchase in 3 years, and you plan to adopt 2 newborn children, and you want to plan to spend $20,000 per year for 4 years on their education when they reach the age of 18. For retirement, you want to plan to save 100% of your $62,000 wage replacement at the age of 65. You would consider delaying the retirement to an age no later than 67 or lowering the wage replacement ratio to 75%. You also want to have a good risk management portfolio that assumes a rate of 8.5% and develop a comprehensive financial plan. So let's begin by going over your current financial standing. So I'm going to share with you some pie charts. Okay, so on the left, you can see the current percentage of your assets total, and on the right, you can see the benchmarks of where your assets should be. So your cash and cash equivalents is low, so we need to increase that, and your investment assets as well. Your liabilities and net worth. Your net worth is also low, so we need to increase that by at least 9%, and we need to decrease your long-term liabilities, which debt. So we need to, overall from this data, we need to increase your savings rate and reduce your debt and manage the interest rates on the debt. So this is your income percentages, the percent where your income goes and where it should. So we need to increase the insurance by making sure you're properly covered, and increase the savings, obviously, and decrease the debt payments. So by reducing the debt, we can increase the savings and have enough money to cover you for insurance. And this is the math overall of where this income percentage goes and what you have left for discretionary cash flows for an emergency fund. And now we'll get to your ratios. Like an emergency fund ratio, which is the amount of money you have to fund for an emergency. Right now you have 91% of less than a month, so you only have enough to cover almost a month, and it needs to be at least 3 to 6 months in case something was to happen. You will not have enough money to cover your bills and your current ratio as well. So we need to increase your cash and cash equivalents, like we stated from the pie chart. These are your housing ratios. So the first one is okay, but the second one that considers your debt payments is 36.80%, and it needs to be equal to or less than 36%. And we want it fairly below 36% in order to make that down payment goal for the house that you want. By reducing your debt payments, we would be able to lower this to a reasonable percentage that would work. And your savings rate is 6.5%, and it at least needs to be 10 to 13%, but this is goal driven, and considering your goals, it would need to be very high. So, I mean, we can increase this to at least a 10 to 13% relatively quickly by the end of the year, but your investment assets to your gross pay is only 4.9 to 1, and it needs to be at least 1 to 1 based on your age. Like we stated from the pie chart, it needs to your investment assets needs to increase. So this takes more time than the savings rate would. So over time, before you reach retirement, we can get this where it needs to be. Okay, so let's discuss some changes we can make to increase your savings. We can start by Mr. Burke increasing your plan deferral to $2,160, and this would increase your employer match to $1,080, and have Mary start deferring $1,560 to her 401k plan, and this would have an employer match of $390. So without this increasement, you're $8,157,000 short. But by adding the additional savings from the increase in these 401k plans with the employer match, this would reduce this shortfall to $4,587, which is still not optimal. But if we decrease the wage replacement ratio, which is currently at 100%, to 70 to 75% with the savings that we just stated, and the increase in 401k plans, this would reduce the present value that you need for retirement, which is up here, the $156,000. It would decrease this by at least $39,000. And it would decrease the annual savings you need by $3,527 per year. So it would make you only $1,060 short. And this is more optimal than $8,000 or $4,000. So we would need to lower the wage replacement ratio and maximize the employer contributions with your contributions. And we could easily make up the $1,060 with your increased savings from raises over 35 years. We would also need to decrease your debt, of course, we could sell the motor scooter that's not insured, and selling the stock that's not diversified. This would make up the $14,000, and we could pay off your credit card debt, and this would save you $3,000 per year. And we can plan to eliminate your automobile debt in 3 years, and this would save you $3,600 per year. So eliminating the auto debt in 3 years, paying that off with the continued way that you pay it, and selling the scooter and the stock to pay off the credit card debt immediately. So for the down payment of the house, I'm gonna tell you, you need to save $12,114 at an 8.5 interest rate for 3 years to make up the down payment you can see on the screen here. And for the education goal, you would need to save 4 to 5% of your gross pay per child to make up the total you see here. To review the recommendations in terms of your financial ratios and savings goals, my recommendations is to increase the emergency fund, reduce your debt, pay off a credit card, continue paying off the loan for the automobile within the 36 months remaining, increase your savings rate to meet your goal for financial security, education, and down payment. Take full advantage of the employer match by Mary contributing and John increasing his, and either reducing your wage replacement ratio to 70 to 75%, or maybe consider delaying the home purchase until you have $1,000 down payment with the way you've been saving. Next, we need to discuss your risk management. We need to remove your exposure to untimely death for both of you. Your current coverage is too low, $50,000 for Mr. Burke John and $26,000 for Mrs. Burke Mary. We need to increase these to at least the metric that you can see on the screen here. And we can plan for $500,000 for both of you, and this should cost $375 for John and $250 for Mary. We also need to remove the exposure for disability for Mary and Mrs. Burke by getting you disability insurance, and this should cost $600. And going back to life insurance, we also need to make sure that the beneficiary for Mr. Burke, John, your plan is changed to Mary. And your homeowner's insurance, we need to add endorsements for open perils and replacement value. So this should cost you $100. And we also want to get you liability insurance. So we need to add a pulp coverage of $1 million, and this should cost you $200. And because we're getting this pulp coverage, they usually would want you to upgrade the liability per the requirements. and your automobile insurance. So we need to plan for that increased cost, and this should be about $400. So next we need to discuss your estate planning. So I will get back to what is on the screen here, but for now we're not focusing on that. So let me get up here. We need to change the beneficiary, Mr. Burke, John, on your will from Patrick to Mrs. Burke, Mary. We also need to create a power of attorney and advanced help directives for both of you. We need to change the beneficiary on John's 401k plan to Mary. And we also need to create a will for Mary. So we need to plan to have these state documents prepared within the next 2 years. And we will be covered for that. So next I can get to what I have on the screen now. We can get to that. So this is an overall view of the changes that we discussed and where it leaves you for your discretionary cash flow, which, like I told you, is the money that can go towards saving for emergency fund. So we have the cost for the life insurance, the disability insurance, homeowners, and the automobile insurance. And we also have the selling of your motor scooter to pay for the credit card debt, the liability insurance, and the cost to prepare the state documents I just discussed with you, and which should be at least $1,000. And then paying off the credit cards with the sell from the stock and selling the motor scooter. And then we have the savings from paying off this credit card. Okay. And then we also have the cost, the increase of the 401k plan. And these is the changes. So in total, you would have $8,397 in cash flow that can be used to start your emergency fund. And now we can go over the projected financial documents I prepared for you that would be accurate if you implement these recommendations that I've given you. So first we'll go over Mr. Burke-John, your 401k plan. This is the projected balances of it if you maximize the employer contribution and your contribution, like I said. And this is the projected balances of Mary's 401k plan, Mrs. Burke, if you employ the employer contribution like I recommended and start contributing. And this is your combined savings rate after the recommendations that I gave you. As you can see. And also, we didn't discuss your tax rate, but if you implement these changes, it would actually decrease your tax rate in a year by 0.4%. And this would be your statement of financial position a year from now if you implemented these changes. So obviously it's already, you can see that it's increased your total assets and your net worth, like I mentioned it would. And this is the net worth increase we would have. And this is the projected income statement that we would have. So you would have more money for discretionary cash flows or for saving, like I stated before. We only had about $1,000, so now you would have $9,000 to save. So, and these are the projected ratios you would have if you implement the changes I've given you. Your current ratio would increase, your emergency fund would increase to at least 3 months, and your housing ratio would decrease because of the reduced debt payments, which is good, and your net worth would substantially increase, and savings rate would be in at least that 10% zone we need, and your investment assets would slowly be growing. It'd be at least 0.54 to 1. So that takes time, as I mentioned earlier. Okay. So if you continue on the plan that I've given you, implementing these changes. As you can see, you would be able to meet your financial goals as they came due. Um, may have to make some slight changes, like I mentioned earlier, but I will be sending you a closing engagement letter for you to review all these recommendations that I've given you. And if you have any questions regarding this financial plan, please just contact me. Thank you.